vote and turning people out to vote. About 135,000 conversations have taken place over the last 4 weeks between Labor volunteers, either on the doorstep or on the phone. And we know that that's making a big difference. We know from the conversations that we've been having with people that we are changing people's minds with the persuasion phone calls and door knocking that we have been doing. So there's still a lot of undecided voters out there. That's also coming through very clearly, and that's why the on-the-ground campaign that's really ramping up over the final week really is going to make a difference in this election, because we are going to see more people voting on the day and voting late rather than voting early like they were last time, and that means that these final days of the campaign are going to be really critical.
You've been out telling your supporters this morning that we're going to win.
We're in it to win it. Yep.
Do you really believe that?
Yep, I do.
You believe that?
I absolutely do. I do. Yep, absolutely.
Despite every poll saying that.
What the polls showed is that for nearly 5 weeks in a row, the National Party's numbers have been coming down. And so our job over the next 7 days is to make sure that we turn people out to vote for us.
What are your polls saying? Numbers are coming down rather than Nationals?
The centre-right bloc, Nationals numbers have been coming down consistently, and the centre-right bloc has been coming down. The gap between the two blocks of potential governing parties has been narrowing week on week.
What do you think it is that people are ready to hear about the number of rural votes that aren't going to be open on voting day? Is that acceptable?
It's comparable with previous elections. So 2020 was a bit of an aberration in the sense that there were a lot more polling booths open because of COVID-19 restrictions. But if you compare the polling booth availability this election to, say, 2017 or earlier elections, it's comparable.
Should people have to travel that far just to cast their vote?
I mean, a lot of effort goes into making sure that people don't have to travel too far in order to cast their votes.
Those undecided, what is it you think that they're waiting to hear from either you or National?
I think they're just genuinely undecided, and so the conversation that we've been having with them is about, weighing up when we talk to them about the things that they're weighing up, the questions that they have. It's all different. It's different for every person. But when we have conversations with them about those issues, actually, we're finding a very good, strong support for Labor.
But neither of you are really reaching them, the soft voters.
No, I think we are reaching them.
Speaking of polls, what are your polls telling you?
We don't share those.
You're inching up.
We're certainly, the movement in the last week has been positive.
And why do you think what's driving that?
Well, first of all, I think that people have realised that the National Party's, tax promises are pretty hollow, and that the vast majority of New Zealanders could end up worse off if there's a change of government.
Aren't your tax promises pretty hollow as well?
Absolutely not.
Really struggled to defend your GST policy without examination.
No, we've said, I disagree with that characterisation, but we have said that we will take GST off fresh fruit and veggies, and that's exactly what we'll do. But we've also, but we have also indicated that we'll be. We've also indicated that we're going to be boosting working for families by an extra $25 a week for those with the in-work tax credit. Yeah, exactly. And when you add up all of the things that are on offer under Labor and all the things that are on offer under National, what a lot of families are finding out is actually when they do that exercise, they're going to be better off with Labor.
Do people talk to you about the GST plan when you're out and about? Do you bring that up?
A lot of people haven't actually necessarily engaged in all of the specific commitments that the parties are making, and that's what the election campaign is about.
Do people bring up National's tax plan to you at all?
There's a general feeling that National's numbers don't add up, and so when encouraged to think about that, and when encouraged to weigh up the offers of both sides, generally speaking, we find a lot of support switching to Labor.
You've got a week until the polls close. You've got a week to sort of turn things around. Do you feel the pressure to catch up?
Well, clearly I've been in isolation for much of the last week, but we're going to have a very, very active ground campaign for the next 7 days.
Yeah, speaking of Winston Peters, obviously, the polls have suggested that less people trust him than they would. Does that, I guess, motivate your campaign in the last week?
I think New Zealanders are absolutely fed up of the country being held to ransom by Winston Peters. So my very clear message to them is if you don't want that to happen, give your party vote to Labor.
On Winston Peters.
No, I haven't actually seen them. So.
On Winston Peters, new poll found most people don't believe Peters when he says he wouldn't work with the Labor Party.
Well, I've been very clear the Labor Party won't be working with him.
Will you create a scheme that will buy out properties destroyed during extreme weather events when Brown wants this
We've worked with them on the current cyclone recovery and flooding recovery, and we have got a scheme in place that's been agreed. we, of course, as a government, need to make sure that we're looking at future events and making sure we're planning for future events. We've committed to a managed retreat policy, a more consistent managed retreat approach in the future. The lessons that we've learned from this most recent exercise will certainly help to inform that. That's not something we're going to rush through immediately. Obviously, it needs to be done. But yes, we will commit to there being a framework that can apply in future events.
Generally, what's the party's view on government buyouts for properties destroyed in the weather?
It's never clean cut. You have to look at a whole range of issues, including insurance coverage. We don't want the government to basically become the default for people who aren't insured, because I think that would send all of the wrong messages and it would effectively penalise people who do the right thing by getting insurance. These issues have been grappled with in the past. So we've grappled with them with the flooding and the cyclones. The national government grappled with them with the Canterbury earthquake and the buyouts following the Canterbury earthquake. I think what we now know, though, is that we're likely to see these kind of things coming up more regularly, so we can think about that and make sure we've got a consistent framework that can apply in any of these natural disaster scenarios.
You might end up.
If you're 1 cent shy come October the 15th, you will absolutely not make the call. You'll let National go.
I have been very clear that Winston Peters and New Zealand First will not be part of any government that I'm leading.
Not even a confidence in supply, not even you absolutely just want to go there.
I've indicated that we're not going to be working with Winston Peters and New Zealand First.
How long do you expect for that process, that negotiation process to take? How long do you want that to take before coming out and saying this is the deal?
I think we'd certainly want the new government up and running well before Christmas. Well, certainly. I mean, it depends how. Well, one of the things, one of the things you have to factor in is if it's a very close election, then the vote count may take some time. So you've got to, because there could be challenges and all of those sorts of things. So you're not in a position to form government until the writ has been returned. But certainly, I would like it within a few weeks of the writ being returned.
So if you are not in a position to form a government, how long do you think you might take to inform Kiwis of what your next step will be?
My own personal next step. Look, that'll be something that I'll talk to the team about before making any decision on that. But as I've indicated all the way along, I'm not spending any time thinking about Plan B.
If Labour does get it across the line, you'd have to probably work with those two parties, Greens and Te Pāti Māori, and they both prioritise the wealth tax. So you're not budging on that at all?
No, I've been very clear. We're not going to be implementing a wealth tax.
It's like a top priority.
And it can be their top priority, but it's not for us, and we've indicated that we won't support it.
Have you made any changes to how you approach public engagement?
Not really.
Seems like you have. You seem a lot more engaged.
Well, thank you.
Is it that you had realised you needed to be out and about today? For instance, you're racing across all corners of Auckland. You're out there with people. Did you realise you needed to be doing that? Should you have been doing that sooner?
We are certainly making up for lost ground. I mean, I spent 6 days where I wasn't able to get out and about. So.
But
even prior to that.
Prior to you being in isolation, with respect, you were on 26.5 in the polls before you got COVID. It's not like you've all of a sudden dropped because you've been in isolation.
Look, I think that people are seeing what the National Party are offering, and they're seeing how hollow their promises are, and we are seeing momentum building behind Labour's campaign.
So had you basically given up before you had?
No, absolutely not.
What recent example do you have for a party behind by 8 with a week to go, behind its nearest competitor, or the biggest competitor, coming back and making up 8+?
Well, look, as I indicated yesterday, the last few days of an election campaign can make an enormous difference. The difference between the final set of polls that were released before the last election and what happened on the day, there was a near 10-point difference. So a lot can change in a matter of days.
National and Act are talking again tough on crime, longer sentences, etc. What do you think about that approach?
Well, it's more hollow rhetoric and bumper sticker slogans from them. Actually, if we want to get tough on crime, we've got to get tough on the underlying causes of crime. Inequality in New Zealand contributes to crime. We've got to actually make sure that we're providing the police with the resources they need to tackle the criminal offending that they are finding. Under the last national government, they were closing police stations because they couldn't afford to keep them open.
Act saying they want another 2,500 odd people in prison over the next few years, and that'll cost $1 a day. What do you think about those?
I think we need to have less crime in the first place, rather than focusing on locking people up after the fact.
Does tightening electronic monitoring, does that change the motivations for you?
Yes, I think we do need to look again at electronic monitoring. The current rules around electronic monitoring were introduced in 2016 during the tenure of the last national government. I think we have seen some recent examples of people on who are being electronically monitored where they have a history of violent offending, and I think that is something we need to look at.
That's not true. The current rules
For electronic monitoring, absolutely it is.
under your government, the number of people on electronic monitoring rather than being in prison is somewhat a result of your goal to reduce the prison population.
The rules that currently apply to electronic monitoring were set in 2016.
Yes, but the goal of having less people has resulted on more people.
Which was also the stated intention behind the rules change in 2016 when Judith Collins made it.
How are people still getting their hand for bracelets off? Like, how's that still happening?
Look, that's really a question for corrections. I am concerned, as I said, about the number of violent offenders on electronic monitoring, and I do think that's something that we'll be looking very closely at after the election.
Why
So
have
you
not
would
done
stop
anything before
people
then?
who've
It's not
got a
good
history of violent offences or who are being sentenced on violence from
I'm certainly leaving on the table the option to further narrow who could get electronic monitoring.
Doesn't that somewhat reverse your ethos of keeping people out of prison?
We want less offending in the first place. I don't think that they're linked, so I don't think Deborah Russell getting it is linked to me. But certainly there are a handful of people who have been with me for a long period of time, during the campaign trail, who also got COVID-19. But I'm not going to reveal details of them. I don't think that would be fair for them. But there's certainly more than one. Yeah.
I just want to go back to what Andrew was asking you. You want to bring down the prison population. You also want less people on electronic monitoring.
So if you look at the reduction in the prison population, it hasn't been from fewer violent offenders going to prison. It's been from people with traffic offences or drug and alcohol offences. And that is where the reduction in prison population has come from.
So then how are violent offenders on electronic monitoring?
What's that?
So then how are violent offenders on electronic monitoring?
Well, what I've said is I've seen evidence that there are too many on electronic monitoring, and I think that's something we need to change. But I'm not correlating that with the reduction in the prison population. And I don't think if you looked at the data that you could make that correlation.
How already do that low voter turnout will impact the Labour?
I'm not sure that there's going to be low voter turnout, but I do think that there'll be more people voting on the day rather than voting early.
Are you confident that people will actually get out?
We've got a big mobilisation campaign underway over the final week to make sure that we do get people out to the polls.
The issue around rural votes, are you concerned that gives Winston Peters sort of a populist platform to undermine the elections?
Not particularly, because he doesn't really have much of an evidence base to draw on. If you look at the number of booths that are going to be open this time around compared to 2017 or before that 2014, it's not that different. It's not unusual for advanced voting booths to be closed on election day while they put their resources into opening a greater number of polling booths on election day. That's happened every election that I have been involved in, including in my own electorate. That's what happens.
But going off what you just said, do you think that Winston Peters will be looking for a reason to undermine elections?
I hope not. I think our elections in New Zealand are run very democratically, very robustly, and very independently of politicians.
Except the Electoral Commission's made a number of errors in the campaign. No one's got that easy vote card.
And where they make mistakes like that, then I've criticised them as I did earlier in the week.
The chief electoral officer.
I think that's a judgment best taken after an election, but certainly I am concerned about the absence of easy vote cards, but not just the fact that there's over 1 million of them that hadn't been sent out as of a couple of days ago when I raised my concerns about them. I'm also concerned that the messaging that you don't need an easy vote card also hasn't been communicated clearly enough. People can go and vote now, but they don't need to take identification and they don't need to take an easy vote card.
Why did you say that you had the munchies? You were getting the munchies. Do you know what that means?
I do. Well, it means a number of different things. I take the innocent interpretation of it. I don't know what you could be referring to. What? I did have a nice feed in the car on the way here. Right. No. All right, thanks everybody. I think we've well and truly crossed the... Yeah. Right.